welcome to another Comics Burst from the Full Force podcast, sponsored by Distant Planet Comics and Collectibles, where we take an in-depth look at the newest G.I. Joe comics and related titles of the week, with me as your host, Chris Hostile Takeover McLeod, aka Diagnostic 80. Joining me on this episode is Brian, cheese-eating surrender monkey Hickey. On this instalment of your absolutely favourite kind of burst, we look at issue number 2 of the newest IDW G.I. Joe comic from Paul Allor. So without further ado, let's get stuck into this comics burst. With Cobra ascendant across the globe, the G.I. Joe program takes on new recruits to fight back. Are the recruits everyday people determined to fight for their country, ready for the realities of war, or will Cobra root out and destroy the initiative before it has a chance to launch? I don't know why I'm doing an explosion there, there's never another explosion. So yes, brilliant. So fresh from my trip to CoilCon and meeting Paul Allor in person and talking to him for a good solid couple of days, which was amazing, and also being shown loads of cool stuff, including issue 3 as a sneak advance. All I'm going to say is, obviously we'll focus on issue 2 today, and then I may tell you how good issue 3 is at the end of the show. And I think one of the reasons why I wasn't too blown away by Snake Hunt Part 2 was because this issue of G.I. Joe was just so bloody good. I mean, what do you think?
Yes. Do you know what, Chris? It's hard to say this because I love Larry's work and I really enjoy the Real American Hero comic.
Same.
And you get the bleeper ready. Me. Paul Allor's work on this and the artwork from Chris Evenhuis. It's just this is an amazing comic.
Yeah.
This is amazing. I cannot believe how good this is.
I have to say, like the first issue I enjoyed, right? I enjoyed the first issue, but there was so much up in the air that you just didn't really understand or know about yet. You didn't know the characters very well. You didn't really know much about the universe, but there was still something about that first issue which I absolutely adored. Again, like but there was, there was definitely elements that I thought, that's weird that wasn't really explained or that's been left out. But obviously, what can you do in one issue? You can't do everything. What issue 2 does is it explores the characters in such a short period of time, but does it so well that I was just blown away. This is like such a good comic from start to finish. It is full of emotion. Like, as you mentioned, the art by Chris Evenhuis is absolutely beautiful. Brittany Peer's colours in this, the colour palette is gorgeous.
Stunning.
Obviously, we're also a big shout out to Neil Uyatake, who did the lettering. We always look over that. It's not fair. They need shout out as well. And Bobby Kernow on the editing. He does a lot of the Turtle stuff as well. Big shout out to you guys. You're doing an absolute job at the moment. This is brilliant. So let's look at those two, the covers quickly. I'm getting ahead of myself. But we've got that my cover that I got was this beautiful like teal and red kind of colour palette with major blood on the front of it, looking really ominous, by Chris Evenhuis, and it is gorgeous.
Oh, it's all Blade Runner-esque.
Yeah.
With the kind of the neon, behind them, the architecture, the buildings, the simplicity of the colour palette is just, again, and we remarked on that on issue 1 as well. It's so striking, so beautiful, and Blood looks so badass.
He does. I love the fact that Blood has got this really like almost like deformity scar that kind of like really, it's not just a scar, it's actually causing an issue throughout the structure of his head. Like, it's really kind of violent, that scar. But also he doesn't have a patch, he's just got like a false eye. So it makes him look even more terrifying, doesn't it, really?
This guy, he is one of the scariest Cobra bad guys I've ever come across. Blood in say like in Battle Action Force or and even in A Real American Hero, he's a bit of a caricature, a bit of a comedy kind of bad guy.
All right,
this
mate.
Guy here
G'day, mate. Yeah, singing Australian songs all the time. Yeah,
time kangaroo dance sport. But this dude here is a killer.
And the interesting thing is we do get a little bit of Blood in this issue, but he's certainly not the kind of focal point in this particular arc. this particular issue. What I like as well is something that Paul mentioned, is that each issue that will be coming out, they're kind of little standalones. Yes, obviously they're following a storyline, an overall storyline, but they kind of do stand alone as these little missions as well, which I think is really cool. So obviously this one is all about it was all about training, not just Tiger's training. Obviously that's a good focal point in this particular issue, but all of the Joes' training, and Scarlet, who is coming to terms with the fact that Duke, who we're not sure the relationship just yet, what it was previous, but we get like a little insight and as to how angry and how much it's tearing her up inside in that first page, don't we?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is all about character development, revealing more about the characters. The first character where we meet here, Scarlet, there's some sort of memorial wall there's a lot of photos of presumably fallen Joes, and she's putting a picture up of Duke to kind of so that he's remembered on that wall. And she just throws the entire stand and all the photos, throws to the ground. The photos spill everywhere. She's not coping too well.
No. And we also get this kind of like this narration going through the issue that starts on this first page, and we do know who it is on, because obviously we see General Hawk on the second panel, the first panel of the second page. He's basically saying acceptance is the first step towards surrender. In grief, it's the last step. So you're getting this narration throughout this particular issue that leads into something really, really big at the end, which we will get to shortly. It's about Tiger coming to terms with his decision to join the Joes, to fight back against Cobra, and learning about all of his kind of teammates.
Yeah, I mean, the guys are just getting out of their bunks. The men and women are all kind of sharing the same sort of sleeping quarters. They're down, in the mess hall, kind of getting their breakfast. And Tiger's kind of sitting in with what we now know to be his squad. So he's been paired up with, Roadblock, Frontier, Fadeaway, and Jinx.
Yeah.
He's part of that team, and he's clearly having difficulty fitting in. It's not that he doesn't want to be there, but he's really unsure about himself.
Yeah, he definitely doesn't feel like he's good enough for them, does he? And that does come across a number of different times. I like the fact as well that we don't just see his team, but we see the other team that are involved in this as well, the CoverGirl-led team. So you've got, I think, Clutch, who's a complete douchebag, which is perfect. Stalker obviously is involved in that. We've got, I can't remember who's in it, Rock and Roll, I want to say, who's just like this kind of airhead, a little bit of an airhead, which is funny. We see Doc in the issue. We see all sorts of new kind of characters kind of popping up, who Chris and Paul have been showing off on Twitter, and I've been reposting a lot of that stuff. But it's nice to see this like small little group kind of just being like hinted at. And then there's one character I have to mention, and I would be remiss not to mention, and that is, I can confirm, Lightfoot. So we see Lightfoot in this issue, and it's a blink and you'll miss it situation. It's where Rock and Roll is telling CoverGirl, hey, CoverGirl, you hear that new kid nearly got Frontier's team killed? And she's
that's Lightfoot.
She's like, yeah, Double R, I heard the exact same rumours as you at the exact same time from the exact same people. And he's like, oh, yeah, right. And behind them is Lightfoot. And the reason it's Lightfoot is because on his shirt underneath, he's got 3 fake grenades emblazoned on his chest. And I just thought, when I saw that when Paul showed me that the first time, when I think it was like shortly after we did the advance of the Comics Burst where we did that first issue, Brian, he showed me that image and he said, because I kept going on about like I'd love to see like Lightfoot in this at some point, and he said, well, and he showed me that, and I'm like,
that's class.
My goodness. Yeah, so obviously, we see some amazing character reveals in this issue. Now, the whole point of this is that Tiger gets his kicked by Scarlet, who, can I just say, looks fierce, doesn't she?
One of the things I love about the character design is that the female characters aren't all skinny and kind of Barbie doll-esque.
Yes.
They're chunky. Scarlet needs to look like she can kick your ass. And the illustration on these particular kind of sparring scenes with Tiger.
She looks like a female MMA fighter. She has like the build of like Ronda Rousey or someone like that, doesn't
yes.
she? But she has that kind of like very, like, will absolutely kick your and she does. She beats Tiger to within an inch of his life, basically, all towards the point of a lesson to be told. But we do flip over to the bad guys, and this is where we see kind of relationship, but the beginnings of a kind of bromance, should we say, between Major Blood and Dr. Mindbender, who's revealed in this issue.
I'm gonna say there's a lot happening on these 2 pages, and it's one of the creepiest moments in this particular issue.
Big time.
We see the corpse of Duke, the cadaver of Duke, lying on Mindbender's table, and he's complaining that Blood shot him in the head, and his reason there is that he could have been scanned his brainwaves, and extracted information. And this is one of the best moments in this comic. Blood turns to Mindbender and he says, "You terrify me."
I know, as if
that's skin crawling just when reading that. Oh,
but he likes it. He terrifies him. That's the other thing. Also, there's a female character in this scene as well who kind of talks up, and she's a little bit kind of she's very rebellious against her superiors, basically, and she kind of kicks up a little bit of fuss, and Major Blood reacts to that, obviously. What's interesting to me there is why she does that, and does that mean that she's going to be an important character down the road? Do you know what I mean?
I'd hope so. She's not revealed who she is.
No.
Blood just refers to her as Mindbender's subordinate and addresses her as subordinate, but she clearly has no respect for authority. Seems to believe in the Cobra ideology, unwavering belief in the Cobra ideology, and that the surrender that obviously happened at the end of the last issue is total, and that there'll be no more opposition. But Blood is more of a realist, I think, and he understands that the Joes will never surrender, as per what Duke said to him just before he was shot.
I will just say it is quite interesting that she does have a speaking part in this, and it does bring to mind that either she is a Cobra or Joe character. Now, she could be a spy. That's another option. She could be any one of the new female Joes that we haven't seen yet. But I don't know. It's just interesting, and I thought I'd point that out because it does stand out to me in that particular couple of panels. It's like, oh, interesting. Was there any need for her to kind of pipe up in that situation? So I don't know. I just feel like that could be leading us somewhere.
I'm going to go out on a limb here. Okay, my wild guess is going to be that she is one of the twins, right? Either Zamet or Tomax.
So you think the Crimson Twins are going to be female,
or
do you think it's a female and a male?
Yes, I'm going for the Crimson Twins here. She's one of the Crimson Twins.
That's a bloody good shout, man. Like, that is actually a really interesting. Yeah, because twins doesn't mean same gender. That is amazing. Okay, cool. Well, you're saying that. I don't know what to say. I'm going to say chameleon or someone like that. So, someone from that kind of era. We'll see anyway. We don't know. Okay, next. And what I like as well about this particular scene is we go from the Cobra operating room to the Joe operating room. And obviously Tiger's his head kicked in once already by Scarlet, is being looked after by Doc.
And she's like, yeah, you're grand. Come on, get back in action.
Amazing. Basically kicks him straight back into it. And then this is where the kind of lesson starts to begin, in a sense. It's not really just the fact that Scarlet's going to kick his every single time, and it's about him doing the Captain America thing and, or just, I can do this all day kind of thing. It's more about something else, which again we find out towards the end. So he interrupts the next team's training session. He jumps in and says, I want my kicked. So she basically sends this new team out and proceeds to beat the living crap out of him again. And then we get a really cool thing of Stalker, doing some teaching as well, and talking to Roadblock and a bunch of the other guys again on that team about, what's the best thing to do in trying to hide behind a car when you're being shot at. Where's the best place to hide, basically? Yeah,
not behind the door, because it's just not solid. You're going to die. But you see, the team are, they're raw. These guys are raw, and the experts like Scarlet and like Stalker, who presumably are experts, are telling them stuff that is probably simple or basic to a hardened military professional, But our recruits they're civilians.
Yeah.
And they're learning stuff that everything is new to them still. So Tiger, while he thinks he's, not good enough or shouldn't be there for whatever reason, ironically, he's as much of a right to be there as the rest of his crew.
Totally. And then eventually, so they go through a bit more training, and Tiger's continuing to get his kicked.
I love how Scarlett's eating her sandwich while she's kicking his...
Literally does him over, and Anne has a sandwich at the same time. Eventually, there's this big conversation between Tiger and the rest of his team, and they're basically saying, look, while you've been getting your kicked, this is a purely self-indulgent thing. This isn't, you're not proving to anyone that you're capable at all. What you're doing is you're basically going on this self-indulgent quest to prove something to yourself, not to everyone else. And while you've been doing this, you've been missing out on all the training we've been getting, and now you're behind. So that the whole point is like, by acting the way you have acted, you haven't been impressing anyone. All you've been doing, you're doing the right thing. In actual fact, you're doing the wrong thing. And, like Jinx and Scarlet end up kind of, as everyone's leaving the room, have this back and forth. Jinx says to this. I think this is brilliant because this shows what Scarlet is like as a leader. She doesn't like spoon feed people. She just gives them she says, well, what are you gonna do about it? And that's what happens here. Like Jinx says he's giving up, we're losing him, and she says, so you're his teammate, Jinx, what are you gonna do about it? And that instantly then has Jinx kicking Scarlet through the door that they just walked out of. The whole team turn around to see Scarlet bang against the wall and Jinx flying at her, and then all the team come in to try and basically subdue Scarlet and fight and all this kind of stuff and hold her back, and that gives Tiger the opportunity to get a few licks in. And it's brilliant. It's like, well, there you go, you've just the whole that group and that team have just come together because Scarlet has kind of sacrificed her body in a sense. Do you know what I mean? I think that was really, really, really cool, and it was really well played out.
This is the highlight of this issue. Well, maybe apart from the reveal at the end, but this is you can see Jinx feels we need this guy. We don't want to lose him. We need him on the team. Herself and Scarlet, they square up, and as you say, they have this kind of bust up, and Tiger gets his chance to lay in a few digs. Scarlet's well able to take it. I love how she reaches round and just pulls the ear off Roblox.
I know, and he's like, yeah. What I really like about this is when Doc's looking him over again in the thing, he's got this big smile on his face. You can see him in the background, the big happy smile that he got. He managed to punch Scarlet a couple of times. That's all he wanted to do. And I like how Roblox says to Jinx, who came up with that plan, you or Scarlet? And Jinx says, I have no idea what you're talking about. So it's almost as if Jinx was just reacting to Scarlet being a to her, and the two of them obviously had this this little kind of, I don't know, a little bit of fight between them. There's a little bit of afters in there for whatever reason. And I like that we're now starting to see these relationships take shape in such a short period of time.
Yeah, it's, again, you see that the character, this is said at the beginning, it's all about character development. Maybe there's an uneasy peace or truce there between Jinx and Scarlet, or some kind of rivalry, but Jinx didn't hesitate to kick her all the way through the door.
Big time.
And allow the team to lay into her for a little bit.
Yeah, totally. And then obviously this finishes the issue now, so we're back with the narrator of the piece, with General Abernathy, Hawk. He's talking to somebody, but we don't know who. So he's looking out the window, it's raining, very kind of bleak, obviously, I suppose, mirror imaging, they're all kind of life imitating art, I suppose, in that sense, where he is obviously very down that the country has surrendered to Cobra, and he is on his last doing what he can to make sure that they still have a fight left in them. We see Scarlet obviously reminisce, looking out the window. She's now in mourning, probably hurting a little bit after the beating she just got. And then as General Hawk turns to kind of face who he's talking to, he says, to avoid defeat, to open a new chapter in this war. And before he can finish, the voice says, you need not to say the words, I hear them in your tone. So set your mind at rest, my dear General Hawk. Clan Destro will provide G.I. Joe with all the weapons and resources you need. Boom. And there is Destro on the screen. And together we will win this war, he says. And it's to be continued. How Amazing was that reveal.
He's making a deal with the devil, but that was a shocker. That was
huge.
I mean,
huge. What I love about this opportunity that Paul Allah has is not just the idea of, we've talked about it before, that the idea of the Joes being this underground rebel force with Cobra winning, and it's been a long time, and they're now they're the norm. They've taken over the majority of the power of the world, etc., etc. It's the fact that you've got this opportunity to reintroduce characters we already know and love in different ways, and in different designs, obviously, but also in different kind of structural ways in the comic storytelling. And it's just brilliant how we are introduced to Destro through the Joes, not through Cobra.
And it's a real twist. Definitely was not expecting that. He's a mercenary at the end of the day. He's going to play whoever he needs to play to strike up, what's going to be good for his business, good for his interests.
Yeah.
Right now, the Joes are on the losing side of the war. They're the ones with a need. And he is going to milk that need purely for his profits.
Yeah.
No loyalty to the cause whatsoever, driven by profit. And he's going to supply them with all their kit that they need to fight back. And I'm curious to see, what does he supply them with? Is it going to be Vamps and APCs and Sky Strikers, or is he going to be selling them his tanks?
Well, all the Destro stuff, things like the Demon Despoiler and those kind of vehicles, and is it going to be Iron Grenadier stuff, or it's going to be interesting. I mean, I'm really intrigued to see where that particular aspect of the story goes. I can say that issue 3 is a completely separate to this kind of scenario, so we don't see any follow up from Destro, but we do see some amazing things. That's all I'm going to say about it. I feel like issue 3 follows a very similar kind of way in this issue 2 does, in that you've got lots of stuff happening in a short amount of time, but it doesn't feel rushed. It's very natural, and also there are some amazing reveals in that issue, I can tell you now.
Cannot wait.
Anyway, coming back to issue 2, Brian, what would you give this as a potating, buddy?
Oh, guys, he's not Paul Adler and the
5.
entire
I'm going to
team.
say it now. You're going to say 5, and I'm going to say 5. It's 5 potatoes, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Can I just throw out there, in Scarlett's training room, there's a nice little Latin quote up on the wall over the window.
Amazing.
I did have to Google translate it, even though I kind of had an idea what it was. And knowing is half the battle in Latin on the wall.
I was told that and completely forgot about it, but that is brilliant, isn't it? Absolutely brilliant.
Nice touch. Folks, if you're not on board with this, get it. I mean, we've totally spoiled the first 2 issues for you, but still get it. It's so worth it. This is G.I. Joe. Going out on a limb here saying this is G.I. Joe at its best, like you've never seen it before. It's that good.
Absolutely. Totally agree with you on that, Brian. It is an absolutely superb issue. This series is going from strength to strength, and I only see it getting better. The next issue, guys, oh my goodness. You get to see basically CoverGirl's team doing something cool. So, yeah, that's all I'm going to say. In any case, Brian, thanks for joining me for these comic bursts, buddy.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you.
That's it for this installment of the Full Force Comics Burst. Thank you to my awesome co-host Brian Hickey. See you next time, and as always,
Scientia dimidium proelium est.
Make sure you get involved with the discussion by liking, sharing and commenting on these videos, and as always you can keep up with the show after listening by following on Twitter @The Full Force, liking the Facebook page facebook.com/The Full Force, and if you would like to contact the show you can message us on either of those platforms with feedback or questions. We have also started a Patreon page, so if you want to see your name up in lights on these videos or enjoy exclusive bonus content, then check out patreon.com/The Full Force Podcast, or click the link on any of the posts this podcast appears in. Full Force. And a big shout out to our sponsors, Distant Planet Comics and Collectibles, located at 601 Business Loop 70 West Suite 263, located in the Parkade Center, Columbia, Missouri. You can visit their website at distantplanetcomics.com and on Facebook at facebook.com/Distant Planet Comics.